Good morning. So I have attended and spoken at hundreds of conferences all across the world, and I'm really, really pleased we could entice so many of you to come to this, my adopted home of London. It's a beautiful day. Welcome to the European AV Summit. I want to hear the Bavarians in the audience. How about the Austrians? The Norwegians? Swedes? The French? We might have a few Brits in the audience as well. That's less modest than most. Welcome. And an Italian. Yes, how many other? Yay! The other thing that we have represented is the entire ecosystem of the AV world. We have demand generation, we have OEMs, we have tech, we have fleet, we have asset management, we have infrastructure, we have charging, we have regulation, we have, what am I missing? Public transport authorities, public transport operators. And anybody I'm missing? Insurance. Oh my God. Insurance and financing, of course. Boy, I'm not going to hear the end of that from from Andrea. Yes, we have the entire ecosystem represented, and I'm really, really thrilled about that. My aim for this event is that every one of you walks out of here with at least 10 people, contacts that you don't know, that you didn't know before. Out of those 10, 2 of those are going to be MOUs, and 1 of those is going to be a deal. That would be a great success, and that's something that we can build on. It's been my pleasure once again to curate this event, and I particularly want to thank the speakers. Many of whom have signed up to be a speaker before they knew what they were getting into, nor even knowing what they were going to speak about. I just called them up or wrote an email and said, hey, I need you on March 19th. Thank you for committing to that, and in particular also a big thank you to the moderators who their job is going to be to herd cats and keep us in line. And we're already on a timing issue, but here we are anyway. We are not going to shy away from some difficult conversations today. I'm going to warn you on that. We are going to really span the gamut of what's challenging us in this space. Because we here at the European AV Summit, and notice that I'm explicitly saying that, we have an opportunity to define our own path, our own value chain for Europe. We think that we here in Europe can go from being an importer of ideas to, once again, being an exporter of solutions here in the AV space. Before we do all of that, I do want to ask, why do we do it? Autonomous mobility and logistics. Why are we here? Well, we do it for money. I mean, we'll talk a lot about economic incentives. We'll talk about investment. We'll talk a lot about equity and venture and state investments and partnership as well. By the way, did you know that the EU is the single largest government funder of the AV ecosystem, larger than any other region? And I should give a shout out here as well to the UK, because it's really invested a lot through the Camp Pathfinder program into the AV ecosystem. Now, are there hurdles? Sure. I just want us to also remember we shouldn't, especially in the context of investment, we should really genuinely stop complaining, honestly. I hear and see stuff on LinkedIn that I frankly wish I wouldn't, because we have an opportunity here. We have an ecosystem, and we can see it in this room and on the waiting list of how large it is, and each one of these connections that we make today is an opportunity to create great and irresistible businesses. There's another reason we're here today, though, and it's not just money. Each one of us wakes up in the morning looks in the mirror and says, why do I go to work? Why do I do this? It's not just to put food on the table. It's because we have something greater in mind. Second goal, something even bigger. We do it for sustainability. It's not a coincidence that we're here at Sustainable Ventures. We do it for road safety. So many of us impacted by road safety failures. And we think and we know that through autonomous mobility we can make improvements. We do it for quality of life. We do it so that we can make our cities more livable. And we can do it to make our societies more mobile. Let me say a few words about congestion. This seems to be a concern in the context of autonomous mobility. I hear it all the time. AVs are either going to solve congestion or AVs are going to create more congestion. Let's be very, very clear. There is exactly zero empirical evidence for either of those statements. There's none. No empirical evidence today will confirm either of those. So let's stop speculating on that. Now, in the US, the situation and the starting point is a different one. Unchecked by regulation and without credible public transport, there may be a danger of adding to congestion and adding more vehicles on the streets. But we're not here to talk about vehicles on the streets. Remember what I just said. We're here to make lives better. Mobility is about congestion, not about congestion, sorry. Mobility is about connections, yeah? Lovely. Look, if I have a choice between induced demand and reducing congestion, I'm going to choose induced demand. Why? Because connections are personal connections. Love, friendship, family, business meetings, commerce, trade, growth, all of these things. People, we're not moving around our cities and our communities because we like to be in cars. We're moving to get somewhere. And if we can all accomplish getting somewhere more easily, more quickly, through autonomous logistics, autonomous buses, yes, robo-taxis and robo-shuttles, then we're creating connection. And if we're inducing an additional demand for mobility, then so be it. I just said robo-taxis and robo-shuttles. I also want to dispel something here. Because I've also heard this statement, robo-taxis kill cities. While the actual solution we should be aspiring to is autonomous ride pooling. Come on, people. Let's get serious. I agree with the sentiment. Yes, we want to avoid single occupancy vehicles, but are we genuinely doing that? Across 400 ride pooling projects in Europe, human-driven, the average passenger count is between 1.2 and 1.5. So let's not pretend that ride pooling is somehow more ethical or somehow better than robo-taxis. Let's stop the semantics. We can call it what we will, ride-hailing, robo-taxis, ride pooling. What it really is creating connections. The term ride pooling, which generally means point-to-point transport, is wonderful. And yes, from a public transport operator, we should move towards that goal. Let me also dispel another one. So Uber, Lyft, Bolt, but also the logistics companies, Kodiak and others, have said, well, everything that we do is accretive. We're going to grow the market. And yes, we are, because obviously saying anything else would frankly piss off their drivers. On the other hand, the business model is built on some amount of cost reduction. And in some of these businesses, of course, the driver is the biggest cost factor. Let's not kid ourselves. We can be honest in this room. Now, whatever our PR teams tell us, that may be different, and whatever they say to the outside world. But in this room, I think we can be honest with ourselves and each other. If we truly want to bring this industry forward, let's not be dogmatic about it. Again, whether it's for all of these, our goal is to move things from one place to another, things and people, whether that's one person or thing or thousands of people or things from A to B. The job is to move people and goods autonomously, safely, economically. One more point on sharing. So I wrote a study, some of you might remember, I'm going to click ahead, in 2019 called Being Driven. I said that there is a double leap that we are challenged by. The double leap, frankly, is that we as a community are trying to move people out of driving, and we're also trying to move people out of ownership towards sharing. That's a lot to ask. Even one of those is a lot to ask, right? And some people have already made the switch. Certainly in London, where we have less than half the people owning cars, a lot of people have made the switch to sharing. Public transport, by the way, is the OG of shared mobility, if you like. And whether it's car sharing, ride pooling, ride sharing, or robo-taxis, you know, that's making progress. But our goal here is as well the other part, and not everyone's ready. So I'm really, really pleased that the tail end of this conference, at the very end, we're going to be talking about shared mobility, and we have Pave. Where's Guido? We have Guido hosting the Pave Europe panel at the end of the day. As long as we're talking about things we love and hate, let me say a few things about regulation. Learn to love it. I urge you not to blame Europe for regulation. Our starting point is that our streets are 5 times safer than US streets. That's our starting point. We also have 10 times more bikes and pedestrians on most European streets, some even 20 times, than, for example, in the US. So our starting point and the challenge for the AV community is obviously a very different one. Especially given that safety is one of our core values in this ecosystem, we will not water down the safety that we have already achieved in human-driven vehicles in order to fulfill our collective technological dream. Instead, we need to build on what are already very, very high standards. That also means, again, our starting point is higher. So let's aspire to even greater safety. It's a bigger challenge than we have. You all got here somewhere, and you will have seen that London is very, very different from LA. But there's another component of regulations that I believe that we in Europe are far ahead than other regions. Here in the UK, we have a very precisely defined AV Act. We have a national framework for autonomous deployment. When certain milestones are reached, operators, OEMs, and insurers can be confident and secure that they can operate fully and legally on UK roads. Confident and secure that they can operate and be insured on UK roads. And we have similar national frameworks, Germany, Switzerland, France, and a few other countries as well. That is extremely powerful. That is regulation enabling our community. This is very, very different from the US, which to my mind is almost looks a bit like it's built on a house of cards, where you can have a city give you an approval, and then the next day the city says, well, you know, we changed our minds. We have regulation actually to thank for it. And that takes me to my final few statements on the growth of our ecosystem before we get into the first panel. Some of you might already be familiar with this, as I've published various versions of this over the last 8 years. Some of you may be familiar with it through the thematic report that Martin Briggs, who's in the back at Bank of America, puts out. That's my roughly semi-annual update on where I think the size of the market will be. Right now, it's basically an imperceptible blip. A few of the things, the dates kind of got moved here, but it's an imperceptible blip. Come on, let's be honest. We have 120,000 ride-hail vehicles here in London. We have 18,000 buses in London, and the worldwide count of vehicles that are operating commercially autonomously is what, 5,000 or 6,000? We have all of the rides that have ever been taken commercially. All of the rides that have ever been taken commercially is less than half of what Uber does in a day. So it's literally, we're at the beginning of a wonderful journey, of growth, immense growth, which I see taking us to about, just in ride-hailing and ride-pooling, about $500 billion by 2035. That's not including logistics. That's not including buses and public transport. That's not including airports, some of whom are also represented today. That's not including any other off-highway application. Now, there's a ton of assumptions, and frankly, you will have made your own models for this, and some of you will have come up with 0.3 trillion, and some of you will come up with 1.2 trillion, or whatever the number. It doesn't matter. It's a big number. And it represents rides, and remember, those rides represent connections, moving people and goods from A to B. So our question is, and as we move into the next panel, who's actually benefiting from this? What is the value chain? Who are the partners in this world? Overly simplified. At the top, we see customer management. We have fleet management. We have a manufacturer. We have software and sensors and compute together as the tech stack. If we want to break it down a little bit further, we can talk about supply and demand matching. We can talk about how apps are optimizing also the utilization rates of the vehicle. Again, remember, the vehicles are not going to be profitable if they're parked 95% of the day. Like a private vehicle, they're going to be profitable by riding 18, 20 hours a day. We have a component that is very conveniently taken over by human drivers at the moment, whether that's bus drivers or taxi drivers, and that's things like cleaning and maintenance, charging, and companies that also get involved in the insurance side of things. Let's call that fleet or also asset management. The beauty of that particular piece, that is by definition local. You cannot clean a vehicle or, frankly, even close the door of a vehicle from Mountain View. So that is a part of the value chain that is maintained. Integration, homologation, manufacturer, we'll get into a conversation around whose responsibility that actually is, production and distribution, and then, of course, the AV stack itself. And that, I think, is a fantastic transition to our first panel. What I will say about introductions here at this conference, I will welcome our guests, and I encourage our other moderators to welcome the guests in the company. We will not go through extensive CVs and tell people where they've all been and all of those, because you do have everybody's link to their LinkedIn profile via the email that Ross alluded to. We're going to save some time on that. The website also has the agenda, has everybody's bios. So without further ado, let me welcome now